Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are, another weekend show with Mr. Dixon. Stevie boy, lovely to see you again.
Good afternoon, Chris. How are you?
And I think we're in the same country, so it makes a change. So
same country, same country, same time zone. I suspect different drink.
Yep. So Stevie, listen. I mean, we can't not but start with the Ukraine. Absolutely, it's terrible what's going on.
Yeah.
And as much as the destruction, the unnecessary, damage, and I mean, just seeing those pictures with the kids and everybody else, it's terrible, absolutely terrible.
It's totally devastating, Chris.
Now to some of the, I listened this morning to the head of our armed forces, Admiral, whatever his name was, but a very sensible, calm approach to the way it was. He was explaining it. But the question some of the journalists are asking, for me, it beggars belief how they can ask such a question where then you have to get such an intelligent professional soldier turning around and saying, with respect, I cannot divulge that sort of information. So, which is it's madness, isn't it? It's absolute madness. But the one good thing that I that came out of it for me, anyhow, was that they're in some form of dialogue with the Russians as well, because of the way all of this is escalating. And please God, I mean, I don't know what's going to come out of this, Steve, but I mean, if it carries on the way it is, there's going to be an exodus of people, there's going to be mass destruction of the country, and then I don't know what the outcome will be after that.
It's frankly, it's just, I mean, no really words, Chris. I mean, I have been watching, intensely over the last week, and it's really I mean, there are no words to describe the sort of the harrowing nature of what these people are going through, and just the level, the extent of the humanitarian crisis that now exists as a result of one dictator's actions. I mean, we all thought Putin was a bit sort of, let's say on the scale, he was sort of on the spectrum in some way, shape or form. I mean, he was never sort of known as the most hinged, democratic, peacetime leader. However, in months and years gone by, it's become more and more draconian and more extreme and more, if I say sort of, diktats that are coming out of this environment. And actually, the people I feel for, of course, we all feel for the Ukrainians. I mean, desperately sad pictures that we watch on the television every night. I mean, I have to turn it off sometimes because the images are really powerful. Images of sorry to say, dead children and maimed bodies and just stuff that you would just, I mean, we're not used to seeing here, Chris. I mean, the Western world, we don't kind of show that level of television, but I'm really glad that the broadcasters are showing it, because it just shows how drastic this is. But the other peoples that I feel sorry for, Chris, are the Russians, ordinary Russian men, women, and children who are good, honest people that try to do a good day's work. And we know that the center of power or centers of power, within Russia are situated in between Moscow and St. Petersburg, and the wealth is also between Moscow and St. Petersburg, and the rest of Russia, the world's largest country, is sort of barren and poverty stricken. And the people there, Chris, I've seen them. I mean, they can't protest. They don't have a voice. They can't speak up. Every day in London, there's another one yesterday. And I'm very proud to say I bought a few bits of Ukrainian merchandise to support, little efforts we can do. At the church yesterday, my church, St. Saviour's in Pimlico, we had a donation drive for donations, and we thought we'd maybe get a couple of carloads that we could take down to the charity that was running the distribution of all these, baby's milk and powders and nappies and clothes and all sorts of stuff and blankets and whatever to ship them over to Poland, who, Poland's another country, yes, a Western democracy, but is also struggling with the management of all these refugees. But yesterday we didn't have 2 carloads, Chris, at the church. We took 88 cardboard boxes of donations. The generosity of the congregation and beyond the church, actually, not those, because not non-church members or non-church going. It just was phenomenal to see, and today is the first Sunday of Lent. We should sort of pause, and in our sort of solemn gratitude for peace and hope that there's a settlement sometime soon that brings peace to these poor people. But yeah, it's awful.
100%, Steve. And the thing is, all those countries, all those bordering countries, they're also worried sick now, because, for everything that, for all intents and purposes, the Ukraine is a buffer for both sides.
Yeah.
But now what they're doing is, if ever they thought NATO was getting too strong, well, now NATO's getting huge support, because everybody needs to protect themselves.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I don't know if it's backfired or not. Chris. I mean, and you saw last week President Zelensky, whom I just doff my hat to that man. I mean, what an individual. A guy who's comedian and actor turned president of Ukraine. I mean, that's pretty unique in any regard. But to see his stoicism and the way he's just been able to connect not only with his people but with the rest of the world. I mean, everybody I speak to, because God, he's a hero. I mean,
he stepped right up, hasn't he?
It's fabulous, yeah. But to watch that, Chris, has been it's really tough. It's really tough viewing, and I just think it's after the 2 years that we've had, to go into this now when we're all hoping for peace and hoping for a level of normality to be restored. Yeah, very tough.
No, it's madness. It's absolute madness. And Finland also now. I was watching those 5 lads who started a campaign about joining NATO, and they said the percentages now in favour are really swinging.
Well, and the European Union. I mean, Zelensky signed that thing last week to the application form to join the EU, and of course the EU was never interested before. Narcissistic, racist bastards that they are as well in the European Commission in Brussels, an awful organisation ordinarily, and that's why these member states that have tried to join before and been rejected on whatever basis they choose now are sort of being welcomed in with open arms. But look, it's all very well in times of bad, opening your arms to these people, but you've got to do it at the good times as well. And that's not the organisation the European Union is, sadly, but I do hope that it becomes a better organisation as there's this crisis.
Yeah, no, 100%, Steve. Well, listen, look, there's a couple of nice stories with regards to what's happening around the world and the support, so we'll cover those as well. But just to break it up a little bit, as I said to you just before we started, in this day and age, how can you get a drunken pilot removed from the cockpit? I mean, that beggars belief, mate. JetBlue flight to Florida, and the amount of drink that he had, and then the reference to wanting to go back to the cockpit to remove his gun. I mean, it's absolute madness. His gun, yeah. Because, pardon?
Sorry, I missed that bit. He had the gun with him on duty.
He told police he needed to get his gun from the cockpit while being detained. And pilots can carry firearms on planes if certified, but it wasn't immediately clear whether he had the appropriate permits. But they can carry a gun if certified in the cockpit.
I'm sorry, I'm slightly flabbergasted by that remark. I'm not often stuck for words, Chris, but that renders me speechless.
Yeah.
Wow.
And obviously he's been removed from his duties, and he'll probably face federal charges as a result, and also because of the PR with it. But it just beggars belief that can happen in this day and age.
Well, Chris, I don't actually. I think it's perfectly reasonable that completely unacceptable, but it's a perfectly reasonable expectation that this still happens. Why? Because people drink alcohol, and pilots are as much as they might want to convince you, they are not superheroes, and they are not they're still subject to the same rules and laws that we are on Earth, and they're not above God in the stratosphere in terms of their importance or their their existence. They might think so, but look, Chris, there are drunk drivers on the roads, many of them. There are drunk train drivers, I'm sure. There are those that drive coaches and buses in India and all sorts of places where these terrible incidents. I'm sorry, I'm not picking on India. Just it's very relevant there. These drivers that drink on these awful roads, you've seen them, and they're caught high as kites. So why would you not think it's surprising that can happen in this day and age? Because I think that is absolutely the case that it can happen, because it happens in every other industry.
Just for me, right? Firstly, they've got to do their briefing. Okay, so someone would pick it up, I would have thought there. Then they've got to go through the security process and procedures. They've still got to show their documentation to the officials. They then got to...
No, well, not necessarily. If you're TSA cleared in the US, it's a US domestic flight as it was, Chris. There are TSA checks there are TSA lanes that allows crew to go straight to the aircraft without a check. So on each flight, there's always a nominee who is nominated by the TSA for a full thorough check. But most crew in US do not receive checks.
But they still have to do a briefing, wouldn't they?
They still do a briefing, but maybe they're briefing with a junior first officer. That junior first officer just got his license or just got his type rating, has just passed out his line training, just come online, and he's maybe flying with a senior captain who's got high seniority. How would you feel if you are in that situation at a briefing where you suspect alcohol in his breath, yet you've just got your job?
This is where SMS and just culture and all the things we've been talking about comes into play, doesn't it, Steve?
Chris, of course it does. But you're thinking about an aspirational world that doesn't exist.
Yeah. But it just goes to show why there has to be so many spot checks and why regulatory criteria.
Oh, for sure. I'm not condoning it, to be clear. As he sits here with a passion in his hand, I say Pacharan's a fabulous Spanish drink for those that are unacquainted.
From the report, he actually apparently he said he told the officials that he'd actually drunk seven or eight drinks before he got on the plane.
Well, do you remember, Chris? There was the Dispatches documentary many years ago on Channel 4 that caught the British Airways crew, I think, on a Heathrow or Gatwick stop. I can't remember. And then
at the party the night before.
Well, I say it's a party. It was a normal night stop. I mean, I've been involved in many night stops. I'm sure you have as well, Chris. So it wasn't really a party. It was just a normal Tuesday night night stop. Monday nights in Gatwick were always the best as far as I remember, but that was Monday night. It was crew night in Jaja Bar and Barmed in Crawley. So Tuesday morning flying at your peril. I say that sort of tongue in cheek and sort of in jest. But of course,
I think so. Yeah.
There's a serious note to this, which was, 20 years ago when that was happening, Chris. There was uproar in the industry and beyond. Channel 4 broadcast this program, and it became really kind of the air crew became persona non grata in some way, in some quarters, and airlines did a lot to solve this and fix it, and try to manage it much better. Now, I would say that they have done a great job in all those years since then, right? My problem is that these pilots still are human beings. These pressures of CRM or lack thereof, or just culture and SMS application are still as prevalent today as they were then. That's not changed. The threat of a senior captain flying with a junior first officer in the port is different. I remember a case in 2005 or 6 where I won't reveal the details for obvious reason, but there was a case that I was involved in, and the first officer did report the captain for suspected alcohol intoxication, and they had to wait until they were on the aircraft to prove that she had the sort of the will to fly. She was a female captain in Germany, and she was behind the controls of her aircraft until the Bundesgrenzschutz then came along and took her off the aircraft and arrested her, and she went to jail. And that was a great result. But there are points in the journey and points in the process, remember, that have to happen to show positive intent to commit a crime. And that crime was flying the aircraft at a briefing table that crime has not yet necessarily been proven for the prosecution. So just remember those things as well.
Yeah. No, I was just picking that as a point where it could have been picked up
it would have been, and maybe that was a point that it was picked up, but it wasn't communicated to the police, for example, until he or she had entered the aircraft and
No, I see your your point. Yeah, good. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Right now, another one which I thought was good, and the way people are doing things now with regards to Russia in mind, but taking Aeroflot off the global reservation systems, so doing things that are being done everywhere now and affecting Russia, with companies pulling out, but also reducing their options to do certain things. That's a very, very effective way of putting things across.
Well, Russia has now been almost entirely isolated, I suspect. So it's rather like this island nation, ironically, the biggest country in the world, is now completely isolated as an island in the middle of an ocean somewhere, and nobody wants to engage or deal with them, with the exception of totalitarian or authoritarian regimes that suit themselves, like China or Belarus or North Korea. Not sure there. I mean, I'm a xenophile, Chris, as you know, and I quite like China. I've embraced China. I've worked in China, spent a lot of time there, and I engage a lot with Chinese business. And therefore, this is not about China, but there is some level of resonance. What Russia is doing in terms of being the strong man or the strong power is seen as a good thing in China. I don't think that necessarily is the actual reality of the situation, because I don't see that Russia is the strong one. I think the Ukrainians are seen by the rest of the world is far stronger than Russia will ever be, and that's driven by the spirit and the stoicism of the Ukrainian people. But these nations will continue to isolate themselves, and so the likes of Amadeus, have done, and some of the GDS providers, and also, regrettably, I guess, for the leasing companies, Chris, but for the lessors, they've been forced by sanctions to remove their aircraft from Russia. AirCap, formerly GCAS, the world's largest lessor, and Avalon, the world's second largest lessor, have been forced to remove aircraft from China by, I think the European Commission gave them until the end of March. So 25 days from now to remove their aircraft from there. And of course, that will be a massive logistics operation, but also a massive impact probably to their balance sheet. Who knows what condition these aircraft will be returned in. I can't imagine that the end of lease checks or the return conditions will be fully met. And why would they? I suspect also that the management of Aeroflot and S7, whom are probably good people, again have been caught up in this mess and this nonsense, because they now can't fly anywhere internationally, with the exception of Belarus, Russia's partners in crime. And so it is rather upsetting that whilst Aeroflot is a state-owned enterprise, and no sympathy, I don't have any sympathy for the state. I have huge sympathy for the people that work for Aeroflot.
I know you said earlier.
I'm sure you, Chris, know some of the Aeroflot team in the UK as I do, who have been good people. There are Brits employed by Aeroflot as much as there are Russians.
You said earlier on, Steve, even the majority of the Russians are victims in this as well. So it's an awful thing. It's an awful thing everywhere. And then you also mentioned about doing things in the spirit. And when you see Ryanair, the CEO saying that he'll be the first airline to return to Ukraine, which is great. Then you see Wizzair offering 100,000 free seats to Ukrainian refugees. I mean, that's all real positive stuff, and it's great messages going out.
Well, just talking of Ryanair and of Jet2, I must commend them on their decision this week to remove face masks from travel. Fabulous news. I know that you will join me, Chris, in celebrating such a momentous moment in our history, as we condemn face masks to the billows of history.
No, but I've got to say, Steve, no, I'm not. I went to the.
Oh, you surprised me, Chris.
No, I went to the theatre. I went to the theatre the other night, mate, and I was on a train, and I couldn't believe how packed it was. And I've got to say,
it's a good thing, isn't it? It's great to see.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's good. But what I'm saying is, I felt more comfortable with my mask on.
Well, you can do that, Chris, but don't ask me to.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, so I don't see masks as a bad thing. And having spent a lot of time in the Far East and like yourself, when people put them on to protect others, which is the way it should be done, I think that's a good thing. But until that happens, I did feel much better having the mask on myself.
Well, I was in Switzerland this week and Spain this week and somewhere else. It's been a busy week. It's feeling like normal again. It's great. And in Switzerland, they've removed all COVID restrictions. It's brilliant. So not a mask in sight, not a vaccine pass in sight. It's amazing. Even at Zurich Airport, there's not a mask worn until you got on the bloody British Airways flight or the EasyJet flight to Palma or to London. So you got a pain in the arse, you've got to put your bloody mask on again, which I wait until I get onto the very door of the aircraft and then I slip it on, because one must be compliant. So I'm compliant on their territory. And that's really important. Yeah. So I'm not saying don't be non-compliant, but be compliant.
Yeah.
And then of course in Spain, I have to still wear a mask walking outside, which is utterly bonkers and utterly ridiculous. However, I am compliant and therefore I conform. But I do like Switzerland's rules, and I do like what they put in place. I'm also proud to say that Switzerland this week, for the first time in their history of the federation, have supported sanctions against Russia, which is amazing because Switzerland doesn't do anything, and Germany, for the first time since the 40s, have supplied them with military equipment. So hey, times are changing. Maybe we'll get rid of all face masks by the start of the summer schedule from every airline and every airport. That would be fabulous news for everyone.
Yeah. But
and if you or others want to still wear a mask, fill your boots. But
there are certain conditions I would always still wear one.
How many years will this go on, Chris? Will you wear them for a while?
Something I think. Like in some situations, I'm not being funny, Steve. In some situations, of some of the places I've been in the world, I wish I had a bloody face mask back then, mate. Because I used to put a bandana around my face and my nose. So do you know what I mean? I think there's nothing wrong with keeping a few masks always handy and always in the suitcase.
Sadly, they're always in my bag. Every time I order, sort of 500 from Amazon at a time, it's quite bonkers. The world's gone mad.
But I'll tell you what I did do, which was really enjoyable the other day, Steve. I did a show with David Ambridge and Rupert Batstone. Two real good.
Well, I listened to it, and I must confess, I'm really proud of someone. You know who I'm proud of? Mr. Ambridge. Because one, I didn't think you'd ever get him on the show. And secondly, I didn't think that David would be able to conform by not using any inappropriate language for long enough for you to get a record done. But Dave, I know you listen to our show every week, and I'll hopefully be seeing you, I guess, in about 10 days' time in a different part of the world from where we are right now, Chris. But I'm very proud of Dave. Dave is a consummate professional, but sometimes in different environments, his language is accepted more readily than in others, Chris. So he did very well.
No, but it was really good fun. And
living in my part of the world now, up in Scotland.
Yeah, Rupert, he is, yeah. But they both agreed now to do a six episode series. So hopefully it'll be as popular as the one we just did. But not intentionally, but on there we also not, and I say it not intentionally, I think we started the Martin Drew fan club.
Appreciation Society. I heard that you were all waxing lyrical about him.
Yeah. It just came out like that, and then I spoke to Martin about it. I said, it's not intentional, mate. But also he was in good form anyhow as well because of the results that Etihad posted as well regarding the 2021 revenue growth. So good on it.
Yeah, great to see again. So I flew ahead last week, Chris. It's good to see them back in the game again.
Yeah, no, it's good. But to see Rupert and Dave like that was great. So I'm really looking forward to the next one. What else we got?
I think that's about it, isn't it? Yeah.
Steve, I have to tell you something else, which I was really, it was such a terrible shame. One of the headlines that came was a Heathrow worker was crushed to death, by a 20-ton machine. And
what?
Yeah, terrible, mate. And for that,
a high loader.
Yeah, and it was only, we're talking about 2 weeks ago, but it's a terrible thing. I've actually witnessed somebody, getting caught in some machinery and dying and having to do the investigation afterwards. And it's such a traumatic, horrible thing.
Good God, I just found it. He was in his 70s as well.
Yeah. Awful, Steve.
February 23rd. He works for Donata. Yeah.
Yeah, so do you know what I'm saying?
Terminal 3.
Yeah, everybody assumes that you go to work and everything will be okay and you come home.
Jesus.
But again, it just hits on the importance for health and safety and everybody being aware. And, there's so many things now, that people have got to be so conscious of and not assume and not take things for granted. But that's an awful thing. Really, 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 really shame. Anyhow.
Good Lord.
Yep. Always got to be on your toes and look after each other. Now, talking about looking after each other, mate, I'm looking forward to seeing you in a different part of the world, hopefully very soon. And as always, mate, nice to have a chat with you at the weekend. And I know both of us wish the best for anybody associated with the Ukraine and the people there.
Indeed.
Terrible thing. But it's such a lovely thing to see the passion and the genuine commitment from other people in different countries willing to support them, especially when you see so many mothers with children turning up because all the men folk have had to stay at home.
Indeed. Yeah, it's really tragic. Really tragic. Yeah. Terrible.
All right, my friend. Listen, look forward to I'll see you next week.
Cheers, Chris.
And online and also in person, I hope. So take care, mate.
Thanks a lot, Chris. See you later.
Cheers. All the best.